Thank you all for joining today. This is the Research Development Opportunity Kickoff, a standard event that we host out of research development that focuses in on a solicitation of interest across the ASU community. Today, we're going to be talking about the DoD MURI, which is the obviously Multidisciplinary University Research Initiative. And we have a wonderful slate of speakers for you today. This is an annual call and generally follows the same format of other opportunity kickoffs, which is a welcome from me, Faye Farmer. I run the Research Development Office. We work across the university with large and strategic proposal development at faculty and leadership levels. We also partner with key initiatives and departments and schools across the campus to bring you events like this. Today, we are partnering with the Global Security Initiative, and they're going to bring their expertise with DoD to the table for this particular program. But first, we're going to learn a little bit more about the program from Jamie Burns, who's a competitive intelligence person in our office, and then go to GSI, and then Quinn will take us through an application material. The solicitation just dropped, so that's very fresh off the presses. So if anything has changed between now and when we send these slides out, we'll let you know. But this is being recorded and will be distributed afterwards. And with that, I turn it over to Jamie. She's going to let me know when to advance.
All right. Hi, everybody. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as Faye mentioned, I'm Jamie Burns, and I'll be walking through some competitive intelligence tips for the MURI submissions today. So I'll talk to you about what the program seeks to fund, what's been funded in the past, and then I'll provide a few strategies for potential ways to increase competitiveness. Next slide, please. The MURI program seeks to fund high-risk basic research that attempts to understand or achieve something that has never been done before. And the DoD set up the MURI program to promote research that focuses on dual-use defense technologies that are critical to national defense and also have potential for commercial application. And I want to re-emphasize that the research must be critical to national defense. So it's good to be familiar with the DoD's objectives, their mission, and really highlight how your research aligns. And then the program seeks to fund research or research teams whose research efforts intersect more than one traditional discipline. And so, multidisciplinary research is seen as crucial to the DoD. They outline that a lot of military problems require a multidisciplinary approach. So as you think about your team, you'll want to think about that multidisciplinary aspect. Next slide, please. And then just a little bit of history on the program. So in FY 2021, the most recent cycle, the DoD solicited proposals in 26 topic areas. They received 298 proposals, and there were 25 final awardees that were selected. Next slide. So a little bit more about those awardees. So those 25 awards were made to 17 unique institutions, which means that a couple of institutions across the country received more than one MURI. And so Harvard, Stanford, and Berkeley received 3 MURIs last cycle. And then the University of Michigan and Duke were awarded 2 MURIs last cycle. And then the other data trend I wanted to highlight, just kind of looking at partnerships over the last 5 years, is really around this multi-university aspect. And so looking at the data for the past 5 years, on average, most institutions have had 3 external partners. So again, as you build your team, it's important to be thinking about the multi-discipline aspect as well as the multi-university aspect. Next slide, please. Our CI team has analyzed the MURI program for several years, and in that time, we've gathered some human intelligence. And so I wanted to share some of those strategies that we've heard from previous applicants with you all today. Really, the main themes are around, engaging the program manager, that being very crucial, and then being really thoughtful about teaming. So as you can see on the screen, strategies include reaching out to the program manager, reading the call, of course, thinking in terms of building your team. And then I also want to highlight this note about understanding the customer's need. And I think that tip showcases kind of that you really need to be aware, you need to understand, align, and highlight how your research really fits with DoD's mission and is kind of addressing those needs that are critical to national defense. Next slide, please. All right, and then lastly, just to add a little bit more strategy, these tips really come from kind of this long-term CI analysis of this program. And so really, again, the MURI program, it requires submissions of proposals that align with a specific topic outlined in the FOA. And those topics span a broad range, and they are determined by the topic chiefs. And so kind of becoming familiar with your topic chief is ideal. And we'll walk you through, exactly how you can do that. And that kind of goes back to that engagement with the program manager. And then one other strategy I want to highlight is around kind of building your research and reputation with the DoD. Obviously, you're here today because you're interested in the MURI, but there are several other programs that can help kind of build up DoD specific expertise and experience. So, programs like the Young Investigators Program, PK Stirrup, so on and so forth, those just could be beneficial. So just something for you to consider and look at. And then lastly, I just want to re-emphasize this thoughtfulness around collaboration, around teaming, and really kind of establishing PI to PI connections, and really kind of drive home the point that it's both multidisciplinary and multi-university. So just, be very thoughtful as you build out your team. That's all I have today. And so with that, I will turn it over to Kyle and Jamie.
Great, thanks, Jamie Burns. That was excellent information. I'm Jamie Winterton. I'm the Director of Strategy at Global Security Initiative. And Kyle Elliott is here as well. He's a proposal coordinator with our group. If you're not familiar with the Global Security Initiative, the next chart, basically we are here to advance DoD research and novel education in the university. So we spend a lot of time looking at mission areas that DoD sponsors are interested in. I myself have a DoD research background. My academic training is in physics, and I was a staff scientist at Lockheed Martin's Advanced Technology Center for 7 years before I came. Sorry, it was for 10 years. I don't know why I said 7, because I've been here for 7 years, because everything blends together in a pandemic and what is time. Anyway, we do a lot of connections with the DoD based on that background. I was from Lockheed Martin, my boss from MIT Lincoln Lab. We know how they work, and we know how they work particularly with research. So we are here to help make some of those connections. At the next chart, GSI's been stood up for a little over 6 years now, and we've been looking specifically at where we can bring interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary research to the DoD, because that is something that's difficult to coordinate, particularly from the sponsor side. So we've been trying to help put together teams and get people to understand what it is that the DoD is looking for. Next slide. So you as an investigator are probably wondering, well, how do I know what the DoD is interested in? And then how do I find the right person to talk to there? Because as Jamie Burns had mentioned, talking to a potential program, a topic chief or program officer is really, really important. There is different information on the sponsor websites of the research that they're interested in. They don't always make it easy for you, but essentially it comes down to cyber stalking. Dig through, do some web searches, find those folks within the DoD that are interested in the same things that you are, and it will be a much easier conversation. Kyle Elliott will go through a couple of resources that are out there just to give you some insight there.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So if we go to the next slide, a quick introduction. I'm Kyle Elliott. I'm a project coordinator and help manage proposals on GSI's pre-award team. So as Jamie mentioned, it does take a little bit of web sleuthing to find what you want on these websites. They're not always well organized, but they do contain a ton of useful information. And especially for this first important step of engaging a program manager, what you want to do is find out what research areas do my research align with. So there's a few ways to do this. On this one, I highlighted the technology locator, but actually last night when I was running through this, I think a better spot would be going down to the Our Research tab, because that splits it up by technology area and also by program manager specifically. So when you go to the technology area, it has it just laid out alphabetically. They have numerous topics there. I mean, like 20 for each letter of the alphabet. So you could go through there, and a lot of the topics do kind of cross-connect or cross-pollinate. So things like aerodynamics feed right into aerodynamic structures of materials and alternative hull materials, things like that. So there is a lot of overlap there. I would suggest searching multiple keywords that fit your research, clicking on those links, and then following from there, if you advance to the next slide, you'll get an information that pulls up of the program officer for that. The code, the department and division goes by code numbers. And so those kind of align, they're grouped by, similar research interests. So you'll start to see trends of who's in what code. And then it also gives you their email address to reach out, along with if there's any other programs or areas of responsibility that they are responsible for. So if you go to the next slide, I'll walk through one more example. And this one will be, yes, the codes are specific to ONR on that example, exactly. But we do have another example, and that one is for the AFOSR. So that is the Air Force, and they also run AFRL, Air Force Research Labs. So this one, it's the same thing. You should log onto their website, and then as you browse through, they have different contact areas, such as here we pulled engineering and complex systems, information networks, physical sciences. And then from there, clicking on those links, you'll be able to navigate to the different program managers, which on that one, it's organized with kind of a little blurb of the research areas they are interested in, not set up by codes. So if we go to the next slide. Okay, and I'll let Jamie explain a little bit about DARPA to you.
Yeah, thanks. The previous two examples that we showed at Office of Naval Research and Air Force Office of Scientific Research, both of those groups are involved in the MURI. DARPA is not a sponsor for the MURI, but because we wanted to talk about making connections generally, I think that they're an important group to discuss. So DARPA is organized by offices. There are 6 of them here that are relevant to university research. If you go to the next chart, you can look up which program managers are in which offices. Now, I will frequently get people that say, oh, I found this program manager and they have a program that's perfect for me. And the programs that are listed here are ones that have already been funded. So if you see a program on a DARPA page, you were too late for that particular program. But there may be something interesting that this program manager is involved in that you could get involved with as well. So I've pulled Bart Russell here. Her area is focusing on human and cognitive and social behaviors. So even though she's got some established programs over there on the right, if you had those as research interest areas, you could put something together and reach out and say, hey, I would like to have a discussion. So how exactly do you reach out and have that discussion? Go to the next chart, please. Putting together a quad chart. I always recommend doing this, particularly with first contact in the DoD. It does a couple of things. One, it distills your idea down into an easily digestible way for the program manager. 2, it's very easily shareable. And then 3, it shows them that you understand that they speak in quad charts. It's almost like a secret handshake. Like, I know that this is something that you use and that you would like to see, so I've made it for you already. Sending long white papers or groups of academically published articles is not a good way to get a program manager's attention. We'll break down a quad chart in the next slide here. But once you do that, no, sorry, go back. You'll write a brief email, and I do mean brief. I try to keep it like 3 sentences. Who you are, what your idea is, and ask them if they can have a phone call to discuss, to get feedback, to talk about mutual areas of interest. And you can follow up a couple of times. If you send a note and you don't hear anything back, know that these people are getting pinged by everyone in academia constantly. So I usually think of like, okay, 3 strikes and then I'm out. I'll ping somebody 3 times. And if I don't hear back, then I'll say, well, either they aren't interested and they don't want to tell me that directly, or they are probably just too busy to take on anything new right now anyway. When you're going at this, think, how do I make this program manager successful? What are they interested in? They need to stand up programs and show research success to the people that fund them. This goes back to Jamie Burns's point of thinking about your customer's customer. And this can be done in a few ways. How is it going to help the defense mission? Who in defense is going to be helped by this? And then how can you help the program manager show their leadership that they are a successful program manager? So let's look at that quad chart on the next slide. Here's an example. We put this one in a couple of years ago, but it's still one of my favorite examples because It's very clear. It says, what we're doing, promote mission success and warfighter health through greater understanding of wearable monitoring device capability and optimal ConOps. If you say, wow, there's a lot of military buzzwords in there, you're absolutely right, there are. And that's part of what my group does, is helps you understand what kind of framing, what kind of phrasing, what kind of words do the DoD resonate with. So when you're making your approach, that's something that we can help you out with. There's a graphic over here that shows how the technology will be used. Frequently, people will try to get rid of the graphic so they can cram in more text. I don't recommend it. DoD really likes pictures, and this is the picture that you'll give them. Then going through, what are the benefits? Why does this technology matter to them that you've proposed? What are some of the challenges that are involved in the research that you're proposing? Thinking through these things shows that you're taking a really thoughtful approach, and that you're not just coming and saying, I can solve all your problems with the thing that I do, because they get a lot of people who do that anyway. In this one, we put down the major goals by the fiscal year. This is a 3-year project that we pitched with some funding goals, and then how to get in touch with you. So that there are a couple different ways to do a quad chart. I really like this example. Sometimes there are some templates out there too. All right, next chart. When you're thinking through what you want to do, I always recommend using the Heilmeyer questions. These were invented by George H. Heilmeyer, who was a former director of DARPA. And this is how DARPA evaluates all their proposals. I find that this is useful in many other contexts as well. If you're working with the DoD, these are things you'll want to be very clear on. This first question in particular, what are you trying to do? It's not the question of what are you, the individual, trying to do, in your lab on a month-by-month basis, but what are you trying to achieve? What's the problem you're trying to solve? Thinking of it from that perspective. Then how is it done today? What are the limits of current practice? How does your research, if you are successful, really move things forward? This is kind of like the why you as well. You want to sell not only the science or the concepts that you have, but you want to sell yourself as the best person to do this, because I know you are the best person to do this because you're here with us at ASU. Thinking about who cares, what's the impact of your research, what are the risks and the costs, how long it'll take. The DoD is not looking for the cheapest option, but they are looking for cost realism. I have seen proposals shot down because the sponsor didn't believe that the work proposed could be accomplished in the dollar amount that was attached to it. So these are some recommendations for how to find the right person to talk to in the DoD, how to reach out to them, and how to start this conversation that hopefully will lead to some a MURI topic or some other program in the future. Like Faye mentioned at the beginning, the MURI topics just came out. There is at least one of them in there that looks remarkably familiar with some research that we've done with a program manager that we have worked with in the past. So I think having these conversations and building these relationships is really important for success. I believe this is where I hand it back over. It is. All right, thanks.
I'm not sure who's going to speak to this. Do we know? I can.
I'm happy to jump in.
You go for it, Jamie.
Okay. So kind of in the same vein of talking to a topic chief, we just added a timeline here to kind of highlight how early to start that engagement. And so for this is really looking at the next cycle. So kind of not this current cycle, but how you could engage in the future. And so really kind of looking at the 4th quarter of 2021 and really starting to contact the topic chief there all the way through award later on. And so kind of starting the engagement now, starting it early is really kind of the key there. And then with this, really this is just highlighting the TRIPS program. So the KE TRIPS program will help you in travel to visit in these times a Zoom meeting to really talk to a program manager, and all of the things Jamie Winterton just shared would be exactly what you want to do to prep for that conversation. So this is really just highlighting the TRIPS program so that you're aware of it now for Zoom meetings and later for when you can travel and actually meet program officers later on. Oh, and then a couple tips about trips. So apply 2 weeks in advance of the trip you'd like to take. You can do this once per year without a match from your department, and then an additional trip after that first trip would require a 50% match. And if you want more information about that program, you can visit funding.asu.edu.
Okay, I'll start here at this part talking about the actual application. So my name is Quinn Wickham. I'm a proposal manager out of our research development office. So next slide, please. Just to let you know that ASU does have a short history of with the MURIs. Most of them has been sub-awards, but I think the kind of two takeaways I get from looking at this. One is that it is competitive. It's been competitive for ASU. The other is that there are a few people that do have some sort of knowledge of being at least on a MURI. So that's something you might want to look into. Okay, next slide. So we're going to just focus here on the timeline for this application, this solicitation that just came out. I think one of the first takeaways I want you to have with this particular timeline is that if you notice, it is the latter half of the longer timeline that Jamie presented just a few slides ago. So there should be a lot of pre-work that's really happened before you get to this stage of doing the white paper. So with that in mind, there are two components of this. There's a white paper and there's a full proposal. For the most part, the dates haven't really changed, but I'll kind of walk into sort of both those two elements, the white paper and the full proposal. There is quite a bit of time here that you have at this point. The white paper isn't really due until June and the full proposal until nearly the end of September. But there are a couple of dates that there are due dates for questions to the DoD. Now, these are white paper questions, proposal questions, but I would hope by the time you hit this stage, you have a pretty good relationship with your topic chief, and you may be emailing back and forth for a lot of those questions ahead of time. So, okay, next slide. So when it comes to the FOA, it is one MURI solicitation, but there are some specific instructions for the different offices in there. So pay close attention to that. This is particularly true when it comes to actually submitting the white paper, because you will be submitting the white paper, but each of the offices have their own way they want the white paper submitted. Okay, next slide, please. So let's talk about the white paper. Wait, yeah, right there. So it's not required, but they tell you that it is strongly recommended. They, in fact, say that that they want to minimize the labor and cost associated with the production of detailed proposals that have very little chance of being selected for funding. So they're making it pretty clear that you need to put in a white paper. And another way to think about this is that you can certainly crash their proposal party by just putting in a full proposal, but you will get a lot farther if you have an invitation. So get the white paper in, and the white paper then is going to provide you with an opportunity to get some specific feedback from the topic chief, and really a recommendation to either submit or not to submit. So it's going to be definitely an advantage to do that. And again, the submission of the white paper is pretty specific to who it goes to. It's just 4 pages. There are elements of this you really do kind of want to understand what the full proposal looks like, including the budget and some. As far as eligibility goes, it's pretty open across the university. They don't really want you applying for more than one MURI as a PI, although they say you can talk to the topic chief if you think if you want to do that, but otherwise it's pretty open. Okay, next slide. So just some of the elements of that, pretty much the cover sheet, the actual narrative of that 4-page is looking at the technical approach, impact on DoD, team and management plan. And they want you to put within that 4 pages a short summary of the estimated cost. You'll have the CV and conflict of interest. Okay, next slide. So the evaluation, it could be the topic chief themselves just evaluates it. They may actually pull a panel together. And you know, that's something that you can certainly ask your topic chief what the evaluation would look like. They put some evaluation criteria in here. They didn't mention in here specifically the management piece, but that does go into the white paper too. So I would, you know, consider that. Okay, and next slide. So assuming that you will get a response from the topic chief whether to go forward or not, based on your white paper. And then we just go to the full proposal, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. Just keep in mind that it's you get 25-page narrative in this aspect. It's a submission through grants.gov. One thing to keep in mind about the budgets on these, each of the offices has sort of a budget table that's specified within solicitation so that you can kind of figure out how to budget year, you know, I guess, I don't know, I think it's like 6 months to 2 yearly. So take a look at that. And they also give you sort of a list of the budget items they're kind of expecting, budget breakdown. Okay, next slide. Okay, again, it's 25 pages, CVs, letters, facilities, equipment, current pending. I mentioned it before, the budget and how that's sort of broken down by the different offices. Okay, next slide. The review process, there's a multi-stage process. The topic chief, they have government expertise. They may bring in some university peers to review these as well. So keep that in mind. It's a pretty broad review panel. So you want to make sure you've got sort of that language that can speak to sort of the technical and non-technical. And then their cost is evaluated separately. Right, next slide. Okay, and full review criteria, do look at these even before you submit the white paper. And I'm just gonna let you read over these yourselves briefly. I think a lot of this was actually talked about with Jamie and Kyle and in a sort of section about the DoD as well. Okay, Faye, why don't we just go on to the next slide? And just to kind of keep in mind that you will have a team working with you on this. I mean, besides just you yourself and your co-PIs, but you've got your research advancement administrator, which will be helping a lot. When it comes to the full proposal, you will get a lot of support. If you get invited to the full proposal, you'll get some proposal management support from our office, as well as some project management support from GSI and other support from GSI. Editing support is available through the Knowledge KE office, and graphics support will be provided as well. I don't know, Jamie and Kyle, can they contact you about support for when they're putting together their white paper?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. Feel free to contact us and we'll see, depending on how many we have going on. But we usually at least try to do a red team review to get the framing right for DoD, get some of the language sharpened up to what they're interested in, and make sure that you're pulling forward the most important things that they'll want to see.
That's great, because definitely want to get you to be invited to a full.
Yes, we do.
Right. Okay. And with that, we are open for questions, and I'll let Faye sort of manage that.
Okay, it's a small team left over here. Anybody have any questions while you have us on the line? I know that we have a few people, we opted not to have the faculty with past experience here because it's that pool is awfully small. But if you have interest in connecting with that pool, we can certainly do that. And I don't need to keep everybody's time. The MURI is out. Go read it. You have some time to think about it. And thank you very much to LJ for setting this up and running the meeting. Thank you so much for Jamie and Kyle for presenting from GSI, and Jamie and Quinn from Research Development. I really appreciate it. As always professional and thorough. We'll have this recording out to you with an email momentarily, I'm sure, because LJ is so on it.